Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you're doing well. Happy St. Patrick's Day if you're listening to this on St. Patrick's Day. And if not, I suppose happy day. I wanted to record something, and I think I've settled on this being just kind of a rambly reading update and hobby updates. I had a couple tag possibilities. I think it's the nonfiction tag and the train tag that I'd like to get out there, but I want to space my tags out a little bit, and figured it was about time for a reading update, but that's a little bit of a challenge because I'm in one of those phases when I'm kind of doing a deep dive on a particular topic, so I can't really sit and talk to you about a whole load of books. I'm looking at one major nonfiction work and kind of diving into a lot of different primary documents, and I'm not quite sure how to talk about what I'm up to without sounding like the dull lecturer, but I'll do what I can here, and I'll ramble a little bit more about that here in a minute. But in case you didn't know, I continue to work on James McPherson's Battle Cry of Freedom. I'm about 350 pages in. I'm through all the antebellum stuff, which I've just found fascinating. I think I've mentioned I really just had the bullet points of that stuff before, so it's been real eye-opener to really dive into that stuff in some depth. But getting to the first Battle of Manassas, or Bull Run, which by the later standards of the war was really a minor battle, but it had major, I guess you would call it, psychological and even strategic implications. So, yeah, that'll be an interesting turn in things. And prior to that, really just talking a little bit about the disposition of the armies or militaries in general going into battle. Looked a lot at the political nature of the war, how the presidents, Lincoln and Jeff Davis, found themselves often having to appoint political rivals to generalships to keep rival political parties happy. And Lincoln was even having to, later in the war, appoint generals from different countries to keep different groups of immigrants on board with the Union. So, yeah, oftentimes decisions had to be for pragmatic reasons, driven by politics instead of what might have been best strategically. Sometimes it actually worked out well, and sometimes it's worked out about like you might expect. But yeah, in that previous chapter, McPherson also goes over just how the armies were equipped. Neither one of them were really prepared to go into war. He has a great line in there about how Americans have always tended to prepare for war after they have declared it. And yeah, he goes over the material advantages or disadvantages each side had, and the military talent available to each side, and the resourcefulness of the supply officers was often a big deal. You had some that were quite clever and managed to do a lot with a little, and others, I'm looking at you, Cameron, who were always with an eye out for profit and ended up getting kicked out rather quickly. So we even got some statistics from McPherson about how much all this costs. So yeah, that was all very interesting, and here I am turning into the dull lecturer like I wanted to avoid. But yeah, that's what I'm currently reading. And I've also thrown in, because of my humiliating failure with Herodotus, once again speaking poorly of my character, I wanted to read at least something that fits the time frame before the first quarter of Historathon is over. So I'm reading this slim little volume about the Minoans. I've really just gotten started with it. It's, well, so far the author is comparing and contrasting what the archaeology tells us about what was going on Crete versus what a lot of the mythology and stories that came later might suggest. And his big point of argument seems to be that the famous temples on Crete were primarily religious structures rather than seats of secular government, despite the famous storerooms and such. He seems to think that it was a priesthood who were sometimes involved in trade rather than those so-called palaces being the center of a king and court. They were actually temples. I'm like, okay, well, listen to what you have to say. So, interesting so far. Off to a good start. We'll see how it goes. So, yeah, here I am awkwardly trying to give you my reading update. I've been thinking, when I'm in these cycles, when I'm kind of doing a deep dive on these topics, would you be interested in me trying to fill the gap with some bookshelf tours? Understand why I say bookshelf tours. My setup is down here is such that I'm not sure that I could really walk you around to the, at least not all of them, to the shelves and show you directly. I'd have to pull some of the books over here and just show you from here. But if that's something you'd be interested in, maybe I could do that. I kind of prefer to just talk about books as I'm reading them, but yeah, if there's an interest, I'm willing to keep the so-called paying customers happy. And with that, I'll segue away from the reading update and into hobby updates. Before I talk about my current hobby endeavor, I'm going to talk about the next one, actually. I have another Lego set I'm itching to work on, but I want to kind of keep a rotation going. I want to do another jigsaw puzzle before I do that Lego set. And I have a couple of them that I would like to do, and I'm really not partial to doing either first, so I'm going to let you all pick. I have one here that's constellations with the iconography associated with them. I'm fond of astronomy, so you're going to see an astronomy theme here. And here I have another one. It is just the zodiac constellations. So, yeah, let me know in the comments which one you prefer. Like I said, I'm not really preferential to either. I like them both, so decide for me. But anyway, I'm going to put an edit in here and I'll show you what I'm currently working on. Okay, here's my current project in progress. It's this book Nook. And this has been a challenge. I like a challenge, so it's been fun. Pretty much every last little piece of this has had to be painstakingly snapped together, glued together, otherwise assembled. A little ship there. Yeah, each and every one of those books is a separate piece. There's a dinosaur skeleton. Had to individually glue all those vertebrae and ribs to spine there. Of course, the cranium and the jaws and the limbs. It is pretty cool, though. And I have a ways to go with it yet. Really, at this point, I only have the pieces that attach to the floor in place. There are going to be balconies and galleries and the walls, of course, and the thing that scares me is the section in the instructions coming up warns that patience will be required. I thought, patience has been required already, but we'll see. So, that's enough for me. That's what I'm up to on the hobby front. As always, I thank you for joining me. I hope you're doing well. And I'll speak with you later. Take care.
But am I not turtly enough for the Turtle Club?